A few weeks ago, the chess world sadly lost one of its most brilliant creators, Woody Allen. But he left behind a legacy that has lost me a tremendous amount of elo, hence the reason why I'm making this video. And before we even get into this, I am going to address the elephant in the room. Woody Allen quits YouTube and all of a sudden I create a course on how to beat the alien Gambit. No, this is an insane coincidence. I have been working on this tirelessly for over a month now. And when I say course, just know this is on Lichess. This is totally free. I made a 27 chapter course fully annotated. And if you've ever used ChessRept, it's the same style where you can play a move and it will say right move, wrong move. It is amazing. It's fully interactive. And I should also note that the course has middle game plans and sample games. And if you find it useful at all, please heart the course. The link will be in the description. And without further ado, e4, c6, the Caro-Kann, d4, d5, knight c3, de, knight takes e4, knight f6, aiming to transpose to the Tartakower. White says no way. Knight g5, h6, kicking the knight, and now knight takes, king takes, the alien Gambit. Now we've entered the key position. White has plenty of moves that they can play, and don't worry, we're going to discuss all the variations, but we need to cover the main move first. Knight f3. This is a very important move, and you need to know what to play against this. And it's simply c5. And why is it c5? Well, c5 is aiming to attack the center while aiming to also develop our knight to c6. But wait a minute, because I know what you're thinking. Why are we playing c5 when we could play the losing blunder, bishop g4? And why is this even a losing blunder? Because it works in every single Caro-Kann variation, except for the alien Gambit. Okay, so now there's knight e5 check, and there's this, wow, there's this fork here, and it does not matter where we go. Knight takes, queen takes, and we are completely losing. So we got that out of the way. Now let's talk about the amazing move c5. And this is usually met with bishop c4 check. And there is a very important move that you need to play here, but let's talk about the mistakes. First of all, there's this knight block. This is no good. The first problem with knight d5 is it's actually an indicator that you have no idea what you're doing against the alien Gambit, which in this case is a huge issue. The fish says this position is a draw, but if you don't know what you're doing against the alien Gambit, you have no idea how to draw this position. So, knight e5 check, and where do you put the king? Well, if you put the king on e8, the queen swoops in, and you're actually just getting checkmated. And the other issue is that if you play king g8, which is a draw, if and only if you know what you're doing, and then they play queen h5, you have a single move, one move that will draw this game, and that is bishop e6. Now imagine you are in a blitz or a bullet game and you don't know this move, you might not find it. And even if you find it, you'll probably be into a bunch of trouble. But you could also find this check over here, and then the bishop blocks, you go back, and then all of a sudden you get checkmated. But wait a minute, there's a very easy developing move, bishop e6, that immediately loses the game. The knight checks you, and this is still pretty funny. If you go here, you do just lose the bishop, but if you go here, you do just lose the entire game, and in a very sad way. And now there's only 4 more options, and only one of them is good. Yeah, and by the way, if you move your king here, you get mated starting with this move. But let's say you move your king here. This is also a suspicious stockfish draw that you will never ever draw because you have to know the move that I haven't told you yet. And so queen d3 happens, and you are in a ton of trouble. The move that you have to find is e6, but I haven't told you about e6 yet. And why would you play e6 here? You probably won't, but e6. And then queen g6 check, and apparently this is a draw. No, good luck drawing this. So by a vigorous process of elimination, the only move is e6. This is the only move that can win you the game, and this move is as important to know as c5, and we're gonna go into this in excruciating detail. Now this takes us to the famous move, knight e5 check, and this also brings us to the first important point. Against the alien gambits, do not put your king in the center of the board. If you do, for example, king e8, there's this very tricky line that I have to show you. So bishop d3, and then we casually develop our knight to c6, and out of nowhere, bishop g6 check, king e7, and this looks pretty bad, and that's because it's terrible. Knight f7, and okay, so now we have this fork, and well, I guess the best thing we can do, best worst thing, is to take this pawn. And from here, white does not take the queen. Instead, bishop e3, hitting the queen with a tempi, but this looks kind of dumb because we take the queen, rook takes, and then guess what? We save our rook. But actually, bishop takes and we get mated. So from here and against most positions against the alien gambit, you need to always remember to put your king on g8. But then we see this move, knight g6, and the rook is attacked. Do not move the rook. Don't put it on h7. It's not worth it. You don't need to. Just remember, 2 pieces for the rook is totally fine. And with the rook on h7, there's complications. Don't do that. Instead, we're going to develop the knight to c6. This is where the knight wants to go against the alien gambit. And from here, there's a lot of variations, and we're going to cover them. But one of the most notable variations is castles. And I'm going to show you this amazing move, queen e8. And you'll probably win some knights in bullet games. Well, a lot of knights in bullet games, and some in blitz games. Obviously, this knight is hanging, but this is such an unconventional move that your opponents probably don't know that they might forget about the knight. But it's kind of like a triple purpose move, and check this out. So the pawn is now defending here, so we're over defending, we're attacking the knight, but look at this. After they take, now and only now can we take this pawn because we're covering this. So this is a beautiful move that you must know in this variation. Even if you know the refutation starting with c5, you should know that the alien gambit is full of variation. So in this case, they don't have to play this bishop c4 check. Instead, knight e5 check, do not worry. Just worry a little bit. If you put your king on e8, don't do that. Just put the king on g8, and now bishop c4 check, e6. And wait a minute, what about knight g6, knight c6, and then white takes the pawn? Well, this is fantastic for us. Now we queen trade, the king takes, and we freely take the pawn. Notice how we are not moving the rook. Do not move the rook. Let them take. So knight takes, king takes, and now rook f1. An incredibly passive move because the pawn is now hanging. And now we develop our bishop, they develop theirs, we put our rook on e8, and now we have an unbelievable position. We are now effectively up a piece. Remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. Ignore the fact that they have both rooks. This is incredible for us in middle games. Just make sure you utilize your pieces. Also, your king is totally safe. Look at this rook. We are up on development. We are completely winning. Now, like I said, the alien gambit is all about variation. So in this position, instead of playing this, a YouTuber named Gotham Chess, kind of a small YouTuber, popularized a move that is c3. And I have a rule. After c3, I play cd. And you do not have to play cd. By the way, this is cd. We're not talking about the player. Also, you can play knight c6. Don't worry, we're covering that in the next chapter. So c3, cd. Now in this position, you're going to see 2 main moves. One of them is going to be this, which I'm going to cover later. The other is going to be castles. Okay, so they castle, and then we put our knight on c6. Remember, the knight wants to hop to c6 against the alien gambit. So now we see cd, and we develop our bishop to d6. And it's also important to note that the knight cannot go here. It also can't go here before because we simply take. And it definitely can't go here now. Oh my god. It definitely can't go here now because after it takes, we take, and then queen trade. And now we develop our bishop to this beautiful diagonal. Notably, we're not even going to lose our rook in this line. This is one of my favorites. And rook e1, rook e8, bishop d2, king g8, and you are completely crushing. And now we're going to be covering knight c6. This is a fantastic move. This guarantees that you're not going to lose the rook. And it basically is the same exact line as last time. castles, CD, CD, bishop d6. So it's the same stuff, but they actually just can't play this. Now I'm going to be covering a bunch of different starting variations and move orders, and you're going to see how thematic this becomes because you know the moves. So instead of knight f3, they try to trick you, or I guess, and they play c3. In this position, we attack the center, c5. Always play c5. Remember c5. And now knight f3, and because there's a pawn on c3, what do I like to do? c3, cd, so you take the pawn, bishop c4 check, e6, and the rest is history. Now, instead of doing this, or this, what can we do? Well, you can just play knight c6. This is like not really different. Bishop c4 check, e6, and then they castle, we take the pawn, and the rest is history. Now we're going to be covering the startling, immediate bishop c4 check. Now, in this position, what do you play? Hopefully you know the move. It is e6. And I'm not going to lie to you. Stockfish does prefer this move. Bishop e6, like ever so slightly, but do not make your life more complicated and play this move. If you really want to look into it on your own, feel free. But just remember, this e6 move transposes us to exactly what we know. And there's one more thing here. Okay, so knight f3, and then what do you play here? Well, now you play this move. And just remember c5. Just remember e6, c5. This is going to simplify your life and give you easy play against the alien Gambit. Now we're going to look at an interesting line that you'll probably never see, but I want to cover it anyways. Bishop d3. And what do you play in this position? The answer might shock you, but I hope it doesn't. c5. Yeah, okay, so dc, and here, what do you play? Knight c6, and here they have a couple different moves. Best move is knight f3, but hilariously they can play this move b4, which is actually a bit of a mistake. And it is important to note that if you take the pawn, then you're just gonna lose your queen. So instead we play this really beautiful move, queen d4, hitting the rook while simultaneously hitting the pawn. And then they defend it with rook b1. And in this position, we savagely take the pawn. If they play this move, we take, they take, and we fork them. But let's say that doesn't happen and they develop their knight to f3. You take the bishop with check, pawn takes, and then you win the pawn on c5. And of course, b4 is a really bad move, so knight f3 is the way, but then we have simple chess. Bishop g4, very nice spin. They kick it, we take, queen takes, and even in this line, we play e6, and then we play very simple developing moves, and we have a nice game. And now we're gonna talk about some variations after the knight is on f3 and the bishop is on c4. So here your opponent can castle, and once they do that, we play knight c6, of course, and the knight can't hop here, so we're pretty happy, and they play c3. And the beautiful thing is the knight's already here, and hopefully you know, c3, cd, so we cd, cd, and then bishop d6. Now we're going to be looking at the most accurate and aggressive move after knight f3, bishop c4 check, but the thing is, you're actually really not going to see this move. Queen e2, and now simple chess, knight c6, knight e5 check, we take, pawn takes, and you should remember this idea for earlier. Where do you put this knight? You plant it on d5, and if they play a move like queen f3 check, where do you put the king? You do not put it here, we simply put it here, and we play a very nice game of chess. Up a piece, by the way. And another starting variation to look at is after bishop c4 check, queen e2. And you'll see why I put this now, because c5 and then knight f3, and the rest should be pretty self-explanatory. And one more starting variation we're going to look at is after knight f3, bishop d3, and I am going to break my rule and play an unprompted CD, even though there's no pawn on c3. I know, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. The best move here is actually just queen e2. If they castle, you know exactly what to do, but look at this. Queen e2, knight c6, bishop c4 check, and e6, and this is an even better version of the line I just showed you. And lastly, in this variation, I want to cover knight c6. Now, this is kind of a freak variation. Check this out. Okay, so knight c6, and now we see dc. And here we actually do not play e6. E6 is actually just kind of bad in this variation. I know it's crazy, but you do not do that. Instead, you play e5, which is just better. I mean, open diagonals for bishops, and then we're about to take, right? Okay, so then they take the pawn, and check this out. So now we take, and then there's this bishop move. And I want you to keep in mind that they just sacrificed their knight for a pawn, and then they're playing this bishop check. And what is the purpose of this? Because knights move backwards, and then if we do that, we lose the queen. But they just sacrificed their knights. And in a bullet game, you might lose the queen, but don't do that. Just protect the queen and you're completely winning. And technically, we have one more starting variation to cover, and this has recently started to get a lot of attention, and it's d5. And they blundered a free pawn, and then you take the pawn, and then bishop c4, then you take the bishop and you lose your queen. But wait, the knight can take the pawn. And then what are they going to do? Yeah, simply push, and what are you going to do? Well, unfortunately, the knight goes back to a dark square and the queen's undefended. And I want you to pause the video and guess the best move here. Or you probably know immediately. It's e6. E6 strikes again, and this is not a fun game to play as black. But here's the thing. d5 is a hope chess move. Your opponent is trying to take advantage of this weak king, and the king is weak. So where do you put it against the alien Gambit? This is the move, king g8. I am not joking. And it looks like they have this annoying move with bishop c4, and they're trying to push this pawn, and then you're in a ton of trouble. Check this out. This is only move. Look at this move, b5. And the funniest thing is that some of your opponents will probably push, and then you get to just take the bishop. But the thing is, it's like, why are we blundering pawns? This is like kind of dumb. Actually, they're blundering bishops. And now we're going to be covering some middle game plans. We're going to go plan to plan to plan. Basically just variation to variation, just middle game style. So in this case, as you can see, we have a knight on c6. We did not take the pawn over here. Okay, so cd, cd, bishop d6, rook e1, rook e8, and we've seen this position. But now there's some important details to note. In this case, knight e5 check, and what do? Well, always remember that forks can happen out of nowhere. And in this case, if we take with the knight, well, we simply get forked. So what we need to do is take with the bishop, and check this out. Pawn takes, we take the queen, rook takes, and we are completely winning. Now, another move you don't need to worry about is queen b3. Notice that there's 1, 2, 3 attackers, and we have 1, 2, 3 defenders. So there's no threat, and now we have knight a5 because knights are tricky and we're chilling. So one more thing we're gonna look at is bishop d2, but we're gonna go more into detail on that in the next section. And the actual one more thing we're gonna look at is queen e2. This is actually the second most played move. Here we just slowly develop, do not rush anything. So now we're gonna see bishop d7, and now they have to put that bishop somewhere. So bishop d2, now we bring our rook into action. Rook c8, and they bring their rook into action. Rook a to c1, and the weakest link on the board is the king. The king should not be placed here. No, so we put it away. King g8, nice, just bring it slowly to safety. And if you see a move like h3 creating lift, actually just tuck your king away in the corner in h8, and now you have a very nice game to play. Next up, we're gonna look at cd, but the detail is that the opponent has not castled. In this case, you have a really nice move. Bishop b4 check, develop with the tempi. Bishop d2 to block. Obviously, we're trading down. Queen takes, and we thematically put the knight on c6. And then they castle. And another notable move that's came up a bunch of times, knight d5. Notably, the knight is also very nicely placed here, effectively shutting down the light squared bishop. And here's the thing, now you might see a move like knight e5 check, and remember, we have the knight here for a reason, and we don't want to allow this just to mess up our structure. So don't. I know I say it a lot, to move the king to g8, but in this case, I mean, we have the knight here for a reason, we're happy to trade. So we trade, pawn takes, and now where do you put this rook? Well, you have three options, but this one is insane. And it's important to note that the rook is actually better placed on f8 here because this pawn is in no more danger. I mean, this bishop is, again, shut down. So we put the rook on f8, and then we might see a move like rook f to c1, and now we have this really nice move, b6, preparing to fianchetto the bishop. I mean, I don't know if that's a fianchetto or not. Yeah, and now we see the move like rook c2, and now we have bishop b7. And now it doesn't really matter what your opponent does. They can put a rook here, they can make luft. In any case, the king is again the weakest link. So what do you want to do with the king? You want to move it to safety, and then you are legitimately up a piece, and you're gonna have an easy game of chess. And now we're gonna discuss middle game plans without a rook. So they take the rook, and notably our queen is on e8 if you remember from earlier, so we don't have to take the knight immediately. Instead we play cd, rook e1, and here I would actually just say, don't let this get more complicated. Now you just take the knight, right? We already took the pawn, and it's okay, just take the knight. The king is now tucked away in safety as well. So we might see a move like bishop f4, but now we have this really nice move, bishop b4. And now, of course, the rook is hanging, so they move it to e2, and we have this beautiful move, e5. The goal is to create an unbelievable center, and we're not really attacking this bishop. I mean, we sort of are, but unfortunately, our queen has been, so we can't take even if we wanted to. And now you'll probably see a move like bishop g3, and it doesn't really matter what they do. The goal is to play this beautiful bishop move, bishop f5, and you'll slowly see how amazing our position is coming together, and it's just so good right now. So they play a move like a3, kicking the bishop, and don't play a move like bishop a5 because that runs into b4. Instead, you slowly and calmly retreat to bishop d6. Now, it should be noted that white is completely lost here, especially if they play a move like queen e2. Even if they don't play a move like queen e2, our position is so simple. We're aiming to put a queen on g6, bring the rook into action, and it's just so easy a baby could play this position. But if they do put a queen on d2 aiming to double their rooks, now we have the knockout punch, knight e4 with the spork, the queen goes back to e1, we take, they take, and then we put the queen on g6, and this should be basically lights out. And finally, we do need to discuss middle game plans if your opponent plays the unsound d5. Because if they play the best move, bishop e2, and you are unprepared, it is a little unclear. Now, amazingly, can you guess the best move? Well, we have a pawn on c5. So what do we play? I'm not even joking, it's e6. Now, it might seem like a fish move. It's a stock fish move, but I will cover e6 in the next chapter. It'll make sense. Now, we could also play the queen trade line, which is the queen d5, which we're going to look into now. Now, your opponent does have a few options here, like they could play the terrible move bishop d2. None of their options are good because notably you are up an entire piece here and you have reclaimed the pawn. So instead, queen takes d5 check, and now we take with the knight, and now we'll see a move like knight e5. And this is not an issue. This is so funny because check this out. Now we have bishop f5 and we're not even losing the rook anymore. And here's where it gets interesting. From here, you'll see a move like bishop takes b5. And yes, this pawn is straight up hanging, but in chess, greed is kind of scary and it might cause you a problem. So instead, I recommend this move g5, creating these really nice homes for these bishops, giving your rook a little bit of leeway, and it's just a nice move overall. And you might be looking like, okay, bishop c4 is kind of annoying, but actually, castles, and then we develop our bishop by attacking the knight. And there's a really tricky move here, and of course that's bishop c4, right? Because if they take, I mean, you could take the knight, right? But then they take, and then they hit the rook, and that's check, right? So we just have the nice move. We just simply push the pawn, and this is no longer a threat. From here, there's a really funny random trap line, but we need to note this. There's traps from both sides, right? So it starts with g4, and yeah, we could take the knight, but just keep in mind, if you take the knight, then pawn takes. If you take, then this still happens, and then you lose, right? So instead we take the pawn on c2, and yes, now this knight is totally hanging, so there's rook e1, and you calmly move your king to h7, preparing to develop the rook. The king is totally safe here. This isn't even a thing, right? So now bishop d2, and you'll notice this pawn's a little loose, and so we play like rook d8, right? We're just like, oh, we're not even defending the pawn. So if you think about the situation, your opponent is now down material, so they want to try to find ways to trick you or win the game. They do not want to keep trading down. They know you want to trade. So they'll play a move like knight f3, attacking this pawn, and this is hilarious. By the way, this rook d8 move is really funny because it defends the knight, kind of critical there. So our pawn is hanging, but the funniest thing is that now we take and the rook is trapped. Now we're gonna be taking a look at e6. Okay, so in this line, there's two moves. There's castles or there's DE. DE is like notably worse, but this is really amazing. So of course we trade the queen, king takes, and now we take on e6. Unfathomable bishop development. And then, okay, knight e5, aiming to play this move. Look at this. Bishop d6, allowing knight g6. And amazingly, look at this, rook h7, one of the only times we can play this. It's not over yet. Bishop d3, right? Because now the rook seems trapped. No, we pushed the pawn. Look, where is this bishop gonna move? It can't move here or here. Rook e1, king f7. Now we're gonna look at the castling line. And in this case, you play ED. And already, you can start to tell this position's gonna be amazing. And yes, they get this pawn on b5. We do not care. We develop the bishop hitting it. Bishop d7. We're up a piece. They do not want to trade. So they go back, right? And where do we put the knight? On c6. Look, and now they can't even hop in the knight, so we're not going to lose the rook. But it's not over yet. You need to know how to play this. So, rook e1 developing their bishop, and now we develop our other bishop. Look how rock solid our position is. Now you'll see a move like bishop e3. The response is queen c7. This pawn is not hanging, but there is a very nice prophylactic measure, which is h3. This prevents this knight g4 idea, which would be annoying for the opponent. Okay. And now there's a very counterintuitive move, and the move is king f7. The goal is to develop the rook. I almost forgot the word develop, and we're gonna be putting the king back in safety in just a second. And we might see a move like c4. Now we have d4 completely dominating the position, creating a pass pawn, bishop d2, rook h to e8, rook c1, king g8, and now you are destroying. Anyways, that'll be it for me. I hope this helped you even a little bit. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I also advise you to check out my Lee chess study. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't cover. It would have taken me hours to film this video, and I annotated so much of it. If you could drop a like or a heart on there, that would help too. Until next time, I have been way too niche.